we can kind of start from wherever you like, but we can also just start from here, so it's not an issue.
Yeah, whichever. I mean, do you want me to do a bit of an intro?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, introduce yourself.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Andy Briercliffe. I've been living, breathing, and working in the online harms environment for about 14 years. Worked at the very heart of law enforcement in the UK, dealing with all the reportable content that has an impact on the UK, covering everything from victim identification, offender identification, content assessment, dealing with predominantly CSEA, child sexual abuse and exploitation, to suicide, self-harm, cyberbullying, extremism, terrorism, and everything like that. Dealt with all the platforms across the world, predominantly law enforcement, charities, mainstream media, just literally everybody. Then I left, joined a very prominent social media company, dealt with it on a very global scale, and yeah, I've done a various few other things. And I suppose at the present moment, I'm considered someone who's knowledgeable across the entire landscape, whether that be education, regulation, the nuances, the challenges, and things like that.
This is just a few things. No, it's good though. It's nice to have people that have actually worked across the entire landscape. It's a rare thing to find. Now, there's some interesting stuff you wanted to talk to me about in terms of like defining what this is, like because the issue is so vast and complicated, right? So what did you kind of want to start off talking about today?
So I thought that a good starting topic was actually when we say online safety, that's a word or two words bandied about all the time. How are we going to improve online safety, and how are we going to tackle online safety? And it made me think, actually, you know what? On the face of it, saying online safety should be quite a clear-cut, easy thing to figure. But actually, when you think about it, I don't think it is. Are we talking of, child sexual exploitation content? I'm going to avoid saying CSAM, which is media and images and stuff. So is it CSEA content? Yeah, that's an online harm and online safety major priority. But then are we talking about just basic abuse? And when I say basic, if I was to call you something over the internet, is that a safety issue, or is it is it people having banter, or is it you and I just having an argument? We're going to call each other names. There's a lot of stuff going on in sport at the moment, and that's across a wide landscape as well on its own. When we consider how many young people and adults play sport, and I mean a lot of sports, is it just using your phone or any device? Is that online safety? Is it even getting in your car with all the gadgets and everything nowadays? You can connect to the internet via your car. Is it accessing your TV? So what the actual thing when we talk about online safety is absolutely massive when we break it down. So what I think one of the big questions is, we need to really dig down into decide what is online safety, because the other point is, when we talk about online is not the internet. We go online to get the internet. So if you've got a smart house, for instance, or the smart lighting, or your smart cooker or a smart fridge, they are online, but they don't necessarily have an online harm to them unless they take over the world.
Killer fridge.
There's a difference between online, for a start, and the internet. And even when we talk about the internet, it's like the internet is, we've got corporate systems, they're on the internet. We've got the dark web, that's the internet. We've got the open web, which is predominantly what most people talk about, is the internet. So I think we have to start thinking about the definitions of what we're talking about, or at least everybody refers to the open web as the internet. Right, that's the acceptable. We're going to accept that when we talk about the internet, we're going to talk about the open web. So there's all these definitions and things being bandied about that I think we need to actually try and get some coordinated language, just on the basics, first of
Mm.
all, to be honest with you. So that takes us back to when we talk about online safety. What is it we're actually talking about?
Yeah, so yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, I was thinking about this last week. In like, where do you draw the line between online and real life, right? So, for instance, if I go online and I start talking to this lass, and then we end up having an argument or something like that,
Mm.
the thought that pops into your head is, is this person going to be? Am I going to see this person in the street, whether it's from her perspective or my perspective? Am I going to see this person in the street, or what's that going to look like? So, and with we talk, like, a lot of people in my generation and younger tend to say, okay, is that online and real life isn't really separate anymore. It's very connected. So
Yeah.
so when you say about like online safety and coming up with these terms as well, it's like, well, does the line for some of those use cases belong in online, or is it actually just all one thing connected?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And in fact, actually, a very prime example of this is the recent protests. Well, semi-recent, a few weeks ago now here in the UK.
That time flies
You know,
by. Yeah.
and that was organised predominantly online. I'm going to use the terminology online. It was predominantly organised online. I don't think many people went round to neighbour's house, knocked on, and said, "Oh, what you doing? We're going to go and have a protest or kick off down
Nip
the
down
road or
to the
whatever."
pub first and have a few
Yeah,
pints,
it
and then
was
we'll
all
catch up.
done
Yeah,
in some form, on a device or something, and that went into the online world because of the protests and everything that went on from that. So I take the view that we have two lives, if you like. We have our online and our offline.
yeah.
And you can either call it lives or society. There's the real life society and the online life society. But both are overlapped massively now because this is the world we live in. And this is the other thing I think is so important. We have to realize and we have to accept that in today's world, everybody, or the vast majority of people, live online in some way, shape, or form. Um, you know, and that's it. No matter what we do, we can't. We're not going to turn back the clock unless there's some catastrophic tech failure somewhere along the line. We're not going to go back to not using tech, not using platforms, not using social media, and all of that. This is the world we live in. It's going to evolve. It's going to develop. So we have to accept it, and it is here to stay. So we have to find the best ways to be able to manage this online society, this online life that everybody lives in.
Do you know? We could talk about this for hours. So there's the next thing. I mean, so aside from like I agree with you. There needs to be some sort of workbook where, the kind of chiefs of these organizations. Is there a clicking from your end? Sorry, I can hear a clicking. Is there
It might be me. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, you're good. Yeah. So if there was a workbook kind of established, whether it was a UN kind of based book where countries, heads of states came together, because a lot of the heads of states are now talking about, fining. I mean, I know in Australia they're looking at introducing legislation, or they have introduced legislation around fining companies 5%. I mean, I know that was on the online harms white
I think
paper.
it's called the Australian Internet Act, if I'm right, or something like that. Internet Safety Act. It's along those lines. It's very similar to the UK one in a way.
I mean, well, I remember the fines used to be in the online harms safety white paper several years ago, and then they took it out because they kind of had to soften. Well, they didn't. I don't know if they had to or not. Actually, that's up for debate, and I don't know the whole story. But I know they kind of softened it a little bit from fining directors personally and prosecuting them down to just the company.
Yeah, they will fine the company because I think there's lots of legislative arguments about that. Is how could you in reality, this is my view, how could you technically fine an individual for a company who and to be honest, you couldn't do it anyway in theory. I mean, let's take a prominent social media company A. Let's say they're global, and they've got a base, let's say in Australia. You mentioned Australia there.
Hmm.
and they're based in the States and anywhere else. So, are you going to fine the head of the Australian company?
Mm.
Well, probably not. That wouldn't look good if I'm brutally honest with you. There's all
No.
sorts of stuff going. And then if you go, right, okay, we're not going to fine you, we're going to fine the head who's based in America. Well, how are you going to implement that? I
Mm.
mean,
Yeah.
we look actually a similar thing happened not that long ago, a few weeks ago in Brazil, didn't it? With X or Twitter, how we call it.
Yes, that court was the well, he was a was like a chief prosecutor or
The guy who worked for X, he was their chief comms, I think, something like that, or public affairs
yeah.
spokesman, and he was going to be arrested. And before they got even that close, he was spirited out of the country. Um, you know, and that's only going to be a very similar thing
Mm.
to what happens. And can you imagine? Let's be fair. Your platform A, you advertise a job, and part of that job description is you may be held criminally liable for any decisions this company makes.
Damn good.
Either people will be asking for a shed loads of money to do that,
Yeah.
or people will be going, no, thank you.
Yeah, no,
So
that's true. And also, like, if it's like a company is an entity in itself, isn't it? You know,
yeah,
by English and Welsh law. So you know,
yeah,
you can't really. Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about Brazil was like, you know, they did the stuff on, you know, banning X, and then they instituted that fine on their own citizens, where if you try and access X, you get fined. I think
yeah,
it was around $6,000, which is half of an average salary, which is crazy. Um, but then they also blocked all of SpaceX's payments as well, which is
yeah.
a
But
separate company.
then you could access X via a VPN, and they were blocking the VPNs.
Yeah, well.
But the interesting thing is, and it's something we sometimes don't really talk about much, is I don't know quite what it's like in Brazil, but when you are close to a border, and when I say a border, I mean it can be a county border. In the UK, you know, we've got the counties, obviously, but when we're looking at other countries, if you are super close to that border, you can bounce off the like telecoms or something from that other country in theory.
Yeah.
So depending where you are in Brazil, you could probably still be using it, but bouncing off a signal from another country. It's like in the UK, you know, if you're on your phone and you're in, say, London, if you're close enough to the border of Surrey, you're going to be bouncing off a location in Surrey, and so on and so forth. So, you know, there's all sorts of things.
Oh yeah.
You know.
I think that's the thing about the internet, is that it's kind of, in its essence, it is ungovernable because it's static air, right? And if I want to communicate with someone down in Venezuela, I can go and do it.
Yeah.
And if someone tries
Yeah.
to stop me, I'll find a way. That's how kids are so good at, you know, like safety settings. See, I used the
Yeah.
word safety settings. That was good.
Very
Trying
good.
to
I noticed that.
change the narrative, you know. Yeah, I think it is ungovernable to a degree, and I think if you like, I believe personally in a difference between parented web access and censorship. You know, I think if an adult's dumb enough and old enough to go and access a site, they can access a site. You know, if it's got stuff on it that we all know is, we can agree a baseline of morality, say children themselves. If it's got like illegal content of those kids on there, fair enough, throw away the key, sort of thing. But I don't know. I find it a bit. I personally am concerned that now it's politically convenient, and you don't have to say anything on this. It's fine. I completely get it. I'm not going to put people that come in here in precarious positions.
You can ask a question. I'll.
Well, okay. All right, I'll ask the question then. So let's say, for instance, we've got a lot of governments that turn around doing things in terms of legislation for children's online safety, which I agree with. I think they should. They should have done this ages ago. Actually, there's not really an excuse for them taking this long. But I'm seeing this happen in a time where they've suddenly got these actors who have purchased or run social media companies that don't want to play ball with them politically. So now I can see legislation being introduced. That aggravates me because I can see an excuse that they're willing to go along with something, but they could have done this ages ago.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. There's a couple of points to just take into account here. Is could they have done it years ago or whatever? Yeah, absolutely. There are things that could have been put in place. You know, it's very much looking at this thing called safety by design. Before anybody designed anything, the first thing they should have looked at is through all the conceivable safety measures in place. Um, and now there is a lot of push behind that. However, when we look at, we're going to call it online child safety, it really actually isn't as simple as some people make it out to be.
Mm.
I mean, especially when we look at it on a global level. And for instance, I'm just going to give you an example here. The global age, agreed age of a child is anyone under the age of 18. Okay, that's globally accepted. But now you've got different countries who've got different ages of consent for sexual activity, for whatever. Even in the UK, it is quite complicated. So in theory, in the UK, you can get married at 16 with your parents' permission. You can have sex at 16 as long as it's consensual, obviously. So you can be married, you can have sex, but God forbid you send your partner an indecent image, because that is illegal, because you're underage, because you're under the age of 18, right? That's just here in the UK. Now, we're trying to look at all this on an international level, different ages of consent. I mean, America, different state laws, and so on and so forth. And how do you manage that? And going back to what I was saying before about, we have to appreciate we're in this tech world, especially young people now. They're growing up with it. In years gone by, and I'll be careful how I phrase this, young men especially grew up sneaking into the newsagents, putting their hand up on the top shelf, and buying pornographic
Brought this one up in the last podcast, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's how it used to be. Whereas now it's a bit more freely available, obviously. But young people, boys, girls, of any gender, whatever, are growing up in this tech world. They're exploring their sexuality in their tech world. And we have to realise that, sending inappropriate pictures is a thing that teenagers do these days, okay? Whether we can have this big argument, whether it's right or wrong, okay? They do it on a global scale.
Yeah,
now,
they do.
With that, there are harms and dangers. We know this, okay? And it's, no matter how many schools we and like-minded individuals go into schools, as saying, give these talks to predominantly teenagers, and say, please don't send these inappropriate pics. It's still going to happen. It's been going on for years, and it will still happen. So we have to find a way to manage it, and almost, I'm not saying accept it, but manage it. It's going to happen. It happens. It's been happening for years. We now have to look at the risks and the dangers and how we deal with that. I'm not saying it needs to be a free-for-all and we can just turn around and go, anybody can send an inappropriate pic. No, I'm not suggesting that. But we have to realise it, that it happens. And, I think I've seen lots of figures, where people have interviewed young people and, aged between, say, about 14 and 17, and they've said to them, have you ever received an inappropriate picture? And it's like 80% say yes.
Yeah.
And then they ask a question, have you ever sent an inappropriate picture? And it's down to about 5% that say yes. And it's like, really, you honestly think these teenagers are going to admit to you, those figures are wrong? I'm sorry, they're just wrong.
And it's it's even, you're completely correct. Sadly, and I giggle, but you're correct. And there's also a case of those children as well, not to saying they're doing the wrong thing, but a fair amount of those kids may not know what's inappropriate, right? Like they may have been told that it is appropriate and it's not.
Yeah, and there is this, kids certain of certain ages, it's historical. Let's put it this way, right? It's historical. Let's look at alcohol, okay? Legal age for in the UK is, it's 16 in your house, parental, observation and stuff, and then 18 in a pub. You could probably ask the majority of adults nowadays, did you drink alcohol when you were under 18 in the park with your mates? Did you try and crib alcohol or whatever? Loads of them are going to go, yeah. Did you ever try and get into an under 18 film? Probably. There's loads. Did you smoke underage? There's loads of things. It's happened in history. You know, now we're just dealing with it on a tech world.
Mm.
Yes, people are going to say, "Oh, they've put more regulations and laws in with the smoking," and I don't think we've got to the getting on top of it with alcohol yet. But
I hope not.
but
I
yeah,
love whiskey.
kids have always done it
Mm.
of some type, and they're going to still can continue to do it in the tech world. So we just have to try to find a balance, and that's the problem. And a lot of people are trying to discuss this like we're going to fix the entire online safety view on the internet, and you're like, well, firstly, the internet is uncontrollable. It's across the world. You're not. No one's going to fix, or no one's going to make the entire internet safe.
Mm.
So let's discuss and look at what we can achieve, what is actually achievable, rather than coming up with these wild ideas.
Yeah, and I had a question come to my head a moment ago, and that was it. Yeah, I was thinking about me when I was a kid doing stupid things, which I still sometimes do. And I was thinking, well, when you get asked as an adult, and you're like, oh, did you have a drink when you were a kid on Christmas? And you're like, yeah, of course I did. I was like a little bit wavy. I think the difference between that and it's like, for instance, like there's some people I know where you'd have a laugh and you have a joke, or you meet that character in a pub or something, and they say, oh yeah, I took off all my clothes and ran across the beach when I was like 17, and you're like, what? You won't be able to do that these days because everyone would take a video of you and it'd be on the internet forever. I think the difference between that generation and this generation is that everything back then was temporary because it was as good as your memory.
Yeah.
Whereas these days it's everywhere, and it's HD 4K, and it's available for anyone to watch.
Video. I mean, the best will in the world, going back 30 odd years, if one of your mates did that, you'd be carrying a big portable, relatively big, I suppose, camera, possibly a Polaroid, because you're not going to take the camera into Boots, are you, to get that processed?
And the quality would be so bad.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas now it's the way we look at it is we live in an instant world. We've moved on from instant pot noodles and instant mash to a generic instant world, right?
Yeah.
Everything is here and now. I mean, prime example is it doesn't matter what platform you look at it, predominantly social media to a point. If there's a crash, if there's an incident, if there's anything happening in the street, if there's a fight, if there's something like that, people aren't rushing to help. People are rushing to get their phones out to film it.
That really annoys me.
Instant, and then that is reposted within an instant. It flashes up in an instant, and we live in this instant world. And it's going back to what you said. Go back 30 years, we never had that. This happens obviously in schools. If a child does something, gets bullied, gets in a fight, something happens, that gets shared instantly. You have no time to control the incident that's happening, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, it's because one thing we've noticed, I can't quote a source in my head, and who has time to quote sources in their heads all the time? I think social media is really good at making people a bit more selfish, whether they realize it or not. They're kind of like the like counter, right? So I'm going to stick on a new profile picture, and I want 500 likes, and if I don't get that, I'll get a bit upset, And it's like, it's not. I don't think it's intentional selfishness in that specific context, because it could be someone who really just does not like the way they look, and they're kind of fishing for a dose of medicine to a degree to keep themselves stable in that moment, right? Which requires further intervention, but that's not for me. But when it comes to like them getting out their phones and videoing in that moment, say there's a lady on fire or something, a fight in the street. A fight in the street is a good example. Instead of them rushing to like call the police or get involved to stop it, they'd rather be selfish and get their like counter up and the view counter up just to video someone else being put through pain.
Yeah.
In order to satisfy themselves. And I just think, I don't know, we talk about these narratives and stuff, and I think you're right, like there is no magic pill, there's no solution to it all, but I think subtle changes in narratives in terms of like, oh, if you're going to video that, there's nothing funny about you. You're just a selfish piece of, you know.
Yeah.
And you're going to video
Yeah.
someone getting hurt, save that and share it because you're a selfish piece of, you know. And I think if more people spoke like that and said, oh, well, you're actually a selfish person, you're horrible for doing that to somebody else, then
I mean,
the narrative would change a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there are two sides to this. I completely agree with you. It's like I used to see, well, I still see it a little bit, a lot of postings of videos about school children in fights. Okay, you know, and I you know, I don't really like to see that, but anyway, it happens, and it's one of these things that you've got this point of, should we be sharing that, you know, because there's an element of promotability to the incident, and you know, should we be re-victimizing that individual who's being put through it with every share and share and share, right? However, some people do share it to actually point out the bullies. Let's call them bullies in this instance. Look what these bullies did to my son, daughter, whoever. They should be punished. Do you know who these bullies are that punished my son and daughter? This should be, you know, they should be affected. So there is a lot that people promote it. Share it, I should say. For the right reasons, for want of a better word, to raise awareness, to turn it round a little bit. But there's also the people who share it for the wrong reasons. So how do you moderate that, for want of a better word? And you know, there is there used to be a thing in some of the platforms where as soon as something was glorified, then that made it wrong. So, for instance, you could be sharing a video like that, and if it's, oh, I hope you find these bullies, oh, they should be punished, blah, 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 that's okay because it's being shared for that. But as soon as someone goes, yeah, look at that person having the boot kicked out of them, yeah, nice one, blah, 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 it's glorified, so you take it down. But you also then start going down to freedom of expression, freedom of speech. You know, it's a very tricky, and this is what I'm saying, it's a very tricky argument once you start breaking everything down. And there are a lot of people who want to look at it on a global level, and you're like, whoa, how, you know, it's just chaos.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, there's lots of different perspectives to take into account, right? And everyone's, especially when you cross cultural boundaries, national boundaries, you get very different perspectives. Because those have developed over millennia so for that, say for instance, a country like Poland. You know, the culture is very different to what it is in France because it's taken a long time for those groups of people to get together, agree and disagree and work it out, and now they've got Poland. Yeah. Which is so cool because I'm a massive nerd about that stuff. I think the challenge we've got now is we're going to have a lot of those disagreements, but everywhere. And I think there's a fair few countries that will look to capitalize on destabilizing groups of people with those arguments because there's a benefit for them to do so, right? So yeah, I love freedom of expression. I'm an absolute free speechist, but I don't believe, my personal view, I don't believe kids should be on the internet. Like in terms of social media, online gaming stuff, because it's so bad for the brain. In terms of when I grew up, and I spent a lot of time on PlayStation 3 playing Prototype because it was the best, and I've also got it right here, and it's a fantastic game. If I'd spent more of my time reading, if my parents pushed me in that direction, and the console wasn't readily available, I think there would be a better, I think my brain would be a lot better than it is today.
But this is what I'm saying, Adam. That I agree with you on that basis. But as I said, we do live in this tech world. These devices are here, whether it's gaming, whether it's dating, shopping, social media, TV, whatever. They are here. They are in our lives. We have to accept it. We can't go back. So what can we actually genuinely, realistically do now? Okay, when I say do now, I mean it might be a 3-year, 5-year program, something like that, a 10-year program even. But we have to accept technology is here. And we can't, say to kids, right, we're going to stop you from using tech. Because, at the end of the day, they're going through school. They have to use tech. Their, communication with family and friends, shopping, whatever you want to call it. they're using tech, and now, and they're going to go into the jobs
and use
possibly
tech.
where they
Yeah.
need to use tech.
Yeah,
So
100%.
if we don't
Yeah.
teach them tech,
Yeah.
so again, this is what I mean. How can we re-look at the concept?
I mean, but then again, look at it this way, right? So, kid in class goes just a DT class, design technology, for anyone who doesn't know, that may be outside the UK, and they do like wood sawing and stuff, and then they get really good at producing wood and all that kind of jazz and cutting it and shaping it and stuff. Then they got into the real world, and it turns out that they're not wanting to use wood on the majority of the features anymore. Say we go back in time to a decade changing over. They're using concrete now. The kids never used concrete before, but they have the transferable skills to do that, which is fantastic. They've used the machines, they know it all works, they get the concepts in their head because the brain's formed to that. A kid using technology and not having access to social media, or at least severely protected social media and online gaming, but having access to a safe search engine with a fountain of knowledge and tools, they'll still learn the skills, like soft skills, that are transferable, but they won't get all the crap, right? Because in that way, they're not going to be on Facebook exposed to reels, TikTok videos that are melting the brain. They'd still have all the training they needed pre-trained, because kids in China get like 2 hours a day, an hour a day on gaming and stuff, because they can see what it's done to their own population. So they're like, we're going to kill it.
So the question here, Adam, is it's a simple question. Right? You should be able to answer it. How do we do that? How do we implement them?
I should be able to answer that. That's an interesting perspective. Oh, okay. I'll give it my best shot. I mean, for me, I'm not promoting what I'm doing here, but I think it's grassroots is your best option.
Yeah.
I think like going to all your places that are severely deprived of any support at all, and really shoving out the messaging through charities that I know they could totally do this, by explaining what's really going on to people and giving them the tools to go, right, you can use this to do X, Y, and Z. And yes, your kids are going to kick up a stink completely, but it'll get better with time, because like all addictions, like drug addictions, for instance, I've done those in the past. Lots of kids these days, unfortunately, are, and a lot of it's coming from online influence. It'll get better over time. The kids will get better at managing their dopamine levels and their expectations and stuff, but you've got to kind of rip off the Band-Aid. I think we've got to go pretty hard and quick at this to begin with, and provide a lot of care and love. They've still got access to the tech, but just remove all these hacky ways of getting around things. I did it when I was a kid. I know how it all works. There's smart people in the world that work for these multi-billion-dollar companies and also don't, and there's definitely ways of enabling kids to have a safe digital experience whilst they learn and develop, so they're well equipped for the future and they're not exposed to pedophiles online and content of people getting killed and beheaded online. It's simple.
Yeah, I mean, there is that, and you just touched on two things, whether it's extremism like the beheadings or paedophilia, or groomers, because if we start going down that, I could give you a massive talk about
language is a variable, but we all know. I don't like them.
The thing is, I think we do have to accept, and it's a bit of a contentious issue, that there are a lot of benefits to social media, to a lot of people, and this is the thing. And in fact, I was talking to someone the other week, and I was actually saying it's very much like junk food. We all like junk food, right? I'm pretty sure most people, not everybody, but a lot of people do like. You like the burgers, the pizzas, the kebabs, whatever. Everybody, or a lot of people, have it. We do like it. Now, would I have it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day? No, because it isn't good for me, and it would cause all sorts of havoc. And it's the same with, I'm going to say, access to platforms. I'm being cautious deliberately not to just say social media, because we've still got dating and gaming and shopping and all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
And it's the same with that, right? If we look at that as the junk food, okay, in moderation, it is fine. If taken correctly, like junk food, like we can have the burgers, we can have the pizzas, it's fine. But we need to learn how to moderate and how to accept it responsibly and properly. Yes, we've seen there are people who overdose, for want of a better word, on junk food and it causes health problems. Same with social media. People who use it too much or get engrossed in doing stuff, it causes, I'm going to use the general terminology, health issues.
Mm.
Right. But if you use it for the purpose that it was actually meant for
Yeah.
and used it in a responsible manner, and when I say that, I am talking everybody,
Mm.
not just kids, literally everybody, then it is there for good.
Yeah, but then see, the thing is though, with kids, there's an air of control, right? Because there's an authority figure in place, whether it's a teacher, it's a carer, it's a parent. There's an authority figure in place. With adults, there isn't, and there's a government authority in place, but in the West, authoritarian authorities are not really seen to very kindly. You have like more libertarian governments, but
Well, the thing here, when we talk about adults, okay, is let's just pick social media, okay.
Mhm.
As an adult, like you and I are both on some form of social media, who chooses to post or make that comment on social media?
Who do you mean? Sorry, how do you mean?
Well, so if I'm going to post, or you're going to post on social media,
Mhm.
firstly, that is your choice. You have decided I am going to post or I'm going to make that comment on social media. It's your
Mhm.
mind, it's your words, it's your imagery. You have chosen that.
Yes.
Social media has not. I just like to point out, I do have my views and thoughts about social media. I'm not promoting it in any way. I'm just looking at it from a complete
No,
utter
no,
angle here.
dude, this is an open chat. We just chat. There's no endorsing here.
Yeah. Social media for an individual post or something like that does not force you to do that. It does not come up and say, "Hey, Adam, you haven't posted an abusive message today. May I suggest this?" I mean, maybe AI might start turning that. I don't know. But
Hey, come on, give it a few years. We'll probably have something like that.
It does not. It does not actually do that. An individual user makes that choice to do that, and that can be whether it's an abusive message, a bullying message. I'm going to try and scam someone out of an Oasis ticket, or whatever it is. It is that individual user who has made that decision to do that, not social media. Social media is the modern day form of communication, basically, but it's just got so advanced. Maybe our brains have not caught up with it.
Yeah,
But it's down to that user. So, and with adults, we've taken the view that if you are over 18 and therefore an adult, you should know better. But it's proved that it's completely chaotic, and adults, don't date, don't do that. So how do we deal with that? From an adult perspective, when people are over 18 and we take the view, and most of the world take the view that if you're over 18, you should know better. Therefore, we're not really going to do anything unless it's super illegal.
The thing is, I don't think you can. Like in terms of like, okay, so for instance, put it this way, there's actually I'm wrong in a sense because I said there's no authority on people in the West. To a degree, there is, because if I go down the shop and I go rob it, I'm going to get put in prison. But I'm still probably going to do it if I want to, if I need to fulfill the desire. Maybe I have mental illness. Maybe that's pushing me in the direction of, okay, I want to rob that shop because someone looked at me the wrong way. You don't know. It happens.
No,
this
exactly.
is normal, by the way. This stuff does happen in the country a lot. So I think it's impossible to get everyone, unless you want to shove a Neuralink chip in their head, to behave appropriately at any point in time. So I think that's why my perspective is a very parented web, where if a child goes online, there should be the safeguards in place for technologically and educationally to then have that child have a safe experience when they come up against something bad, like I did when I was 6 or 7, and I had someone on MSN tell me to go on webcam and take my top off.
Yeah,
I didn't do it. But now it's the kids are confident, they're cocky, they're comfortable. It's bad.
Yeah, and the thing is, we have to accept, and this has been an argument going on for years actually. Who should be responsible? And I'm not saying you're saying this as a definitive here.
Yeah.
Parents should have a part to play. I'm not going to say the definitive responsibility, right? But we do know that there are a lot of parents who don't give a hoot, and just want the kids to go up to the bedrooms and be quiet and shut up,
pretend it doesn't happen. There
are a lot of parents who can't be bothered, if I'm brutally honest. They don't want to know. there are parents who are just so in, glued on their phones themselves that are not presenting a right, you know, standard, for want of a better word, to their children. There's a whole raft, but there are some parents who are really good at it. As well.
Yeah,
So,
and it's always really, really reassuring when you see those parents and those kids as well.
Absolutely. And I actually know that there's a lot of parents who, whether they're younger parents, when I say younger parents, parents of younger children or slightly older, they have seen this situation, back to online safety, arise, and they have maybe changed their jobs to try to promote it and do their best to protect other young people, and I applaud them for that. You and I know some of those people, and but there are parents who couldn't give a hoot. So how do we educate them? We can do the online safety. I'm going to keep referring to online, even though we talked about it earlier. Online safety education in schools.
Yeah.
But when we look at that, it's literally max 2 hours a year. If you're lucky enough, school, and you've got the money, you've got someone in who knows what they're talking about, or you've got someone in who doesn't know what they're talking about, and all hell breaks loose, right? Or it's the IT teacher, or it's a maths teacher, or it's some other teacher who is reading from some presentation. And if you're giving this talk to kids aged between about 13 and 16, they ain't going to listen, right? So how can we change this rhetoric of online safety education? I mean, here's something else, right? If you're watching TV, and this is anybody, you, me, parents, kids, whatever, you will see adverts for gambling aware. We've seen a lot of those. You will see adverts for drink aware, right? I can't think of many times, there's maybe literally the odd one or two, where you ever see anything about internet safety. Certainly, like the ones I've seen recently, I've been on at about 10:30 at night on a random channel.
Oh, it's like they don't want to do it. Oh,
and it's like, that's not going to be useful.
Yeah.
To be fair. Who are you aiming for?
Well, the kids are asleep at that time, right?
Yeah, well, they should be.
And they're on their phones anyway.
Or they're on their phones looking at a certain social media site. They're not watching TV.
Crazy.
Even there's so many opportunities to get this message across.
Oh yeah.
Even if it's subtle, even if it's a subconscious message, there are plenty of opportunities. And I was actually saying this to someone the other day, that when we talk about all of this, it doesn't come down to a platform A or B or C, right? It doesn't come down to government specifically. It doesn't come down to money, or it comes down to one thing, and that's choice, right? I'm using a very generalistic actually want to deal with these problems, right? Do the government actually want to deal with these problems? If they do, that's their choice, right? They choose how to deal with it. Do the platforms actually want to deal with it? Yes, no, that's their choice. Are they choosing to do it? Parents, do they really want to make their children safe? That's a choice. So it all comes down to choice. And are we actually choosing to make the internet safer for everybody? Are we choosing to spend the money? Like anybody, the government, the platforms, whoever. Are we choosing to, rather than spend the money doing this, are we going to choose it to do this?
Well, all I'm going to say on the money front is they're putting up 20-mile-an-hour zones everywhere, and the kids go past my house at like 70. So on little mopeds. So good luck.
Yeah, it's choice. It's choice.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think one of the biggest factors we're missing is etiquette, right? So I've heard the terms digital etiquette thrown around a lot over the last couple of years. It's been really quiet though. There's not many people talking about it. And I think, we don't teach etiquette in schools. I think the closest you'll get is humanities, and that goes across. You can kind of generalize humanities because it's everything human, right? But we don't really teach etiquette anymore. We're getting people grow up and they just don't know how to behave in a decent society.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
it's crazy.
going back to what I was saying about you've got the online society and the offline society. We just look at the offline society, so let's call it real life.
Yeah,
That's just chaos.
but they're so linked that
they're so
you can't
linked. So
teach digital etiquette if you can't teach real life etiquette. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, because it's just a mess.
Yeah. So, yes, teaching digital etiquette, great idea. But it's back to this point of actually the reality is we're not going to get there. Or maybe 50 years down the line when the whole thing's changed anyway. Maybe. But we can't do it in real life. So can we realistically do it on the online? Well, no. But this is what I say. It's right. Okay, let's accept we can't realistically do that. So what can we realistically do?
Oh, I see. Okay, you're talking about more actual practical concrete steps we can take today rather than waiting for Magic Fairy to come over.
So can we improve online safety education, not just in schools? This goes back to your digital etiquette in a way, right? We put digital safety in schools for about 2 hours a year. Great, brilliant. Right. Can we improve that? Yes, we can. Okay. But let's not just focus on the kids. Let's focus on everybody. Where is that online safety awareness, education, etiquette, training, awareness, whatever you want to call it, to adults? Why are we not going into companies to give talks or health centres or libraries or you name it anyway? It doesn't really matter. Why are we not? When you look at a lot of the stuff that goes on online, predominantly it's caused by an over 18. Predominantly.
Yeah, it is actually. Yeah.
So why are we not trying to educate over 18s as well? Yeah. This is back to this thing. Oh, you're over 18, you should know better. We're not going to do anything about it.
Well, but that comes back to the thing. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but I think it comes back to the thing of like the malign actors, the bad ones. They don't want to be educated because it goes against their ethos in terms of they want to cause a problem, right? So then you have to go on the defensive and be like, okay, well, as a parent, I'm parenting my child. I don't want them to be on, say, X, right? Okay, or TikTok.
Yep.
Because there's so much stuff going on. So I don't want my kid to be on there. And that's the parenting stuff. That's all I'm thinking of, is that there's so many absolutely horrible people that will always exist, and they won't necessarily be in the United Kingdom. They can be somewhere else. The Yahoo Boys, perfect example, right? They're not in the UK. They're in Africa, correct?
Yeah.
Well, we think they could be VPN in their way around the world.
The Yahoo Boys are based in Western Africa.
And sorry, because you know more about about them than I do. Can you just briefly explain who the Yahoo Boys are?
Right. Okay. So firstly, the Yahoo Boys is not one singular group. Okay. Just to be clear about that, it actually stems back many years to a well-known fraud. I think it was called a 419 fraud. I think, if I remember rightly.
That's me, man. I can't remember.
Many years ago, where they would literally send either emails or letters or something like that, saying, I need to transfer some money, or you've won a jackpot, we need to put some money into your account before you get this many quid, and they took it on the basis that if 1 out of every 20 fell for it, they'd make money, and so on and so forth. So they used to do a lot of other frauds, basically scams. And then over time it went into things like banking fraud, bank scams and credit card frauds and so on and so forth.
It's kind of kept with the times.
Kept with the times. And then it has exploded over quite a few years. So it does come under the sextortion, what's called sextortion. Not every sextortion is caused by the Yahoo Boys, just like to make them out.
Sextortion is, just for anyone who doesn't know,
sextortion is the technology facilitated blackmail of individuals, usually for the purpose that they've convinced someone to send inappropriate messages.
Gotcha.
It does mainly happen to younger people, but it does happen to older people. And basically, they said, if you don't give us this money, we're going to share these images with friends, family, so on and so forth. Yeah. And if you're a younger victim, you've been manipulated and tripped up with the, not tripped up, but been a victim because it's been an alias profile, and you thought you were chatting to potentially a hot young looking girl,
and that in different cases can actually be like they have no evidence on you at all, or they do have evidence on you. Because I've had it in the past where I had someone turn around and go, "Oh, we've got everything on you," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I never ever."
They will try and go down that. If you start refusing to pay, they'll say, "Well, we've got this." Now, sometimes if they're really clever, they'll prove certain things. They might have gone into certain accounts,
or they'll do a process of elimination. Yeah, this is just for anyone who's listening who's had that and they've not put anything online and they're actually safe, just to kind of give them that.
Unfortunately, there have been a lot of young people fallen victims to sextortion, not just solely by the Yahoo boys, but that's super prominent. And unfortunately, there has been situations where these young people have literally found themselves in this situation. They don't know where to turn to. They've panicked. They don't know who to speak. They're embarrassed maybe by the situation. There's a lot of issues, and unfortunately they have taken their own lives because of it. And that is a sad reflection on what has happened, but that is fact. That has happened. So we can see the real world impact of all of this. So the reason it's called the Yahoo Boys is because predominantly when this all started off many years ago, way pre-sextortion, it was happening under the guise of Yahoo emails and Yahoo associated accounts and stuff, and that's why they're called the Yahoo Boys, and they're predominantly based out of Western Africa. As I say, it's not a singular group. It's a mass of criminal activity, for want of a better word. Okay. It doesn't just solely happen out of that region. It does happen a lot around the world in various guys. So that is what Yahoo Boys strokes sextortion is. And now I've forgotten what the original question was.
So did I. I was just thinking the same thing. See, we can't even go back because it's recording live.
It's all right. So what we can say is, I think we were talking about education.
We were talking about social etiquette, and adults are just equally as terrible as children. Yeah,
and we have to look at improving the education. So as I say, adults as well, and it's back to if we've managed to get that message across to young people, for instance, like if you see this, please don't fall for it, or if you see this, speak to someone. It might be safe, right? It might be fine. But they have to have the ability to be able to speak to somebody. Now, if you've got a great relationship with your parents, fantastic, right? But you might not have. So is there someone else to go to? Either a trusted adult. It might be a family relative, maybe. It might be someone in the school, or there are charities where you could phone up and just speak, even anonymously, and just point out that is available for adults as well as young people, because with adults we now, well, not now, a lot of these crimes are, just like pointing out, a lot of these offences have been going on for years. So just because I say the word now, it doesn't mean it's only just happened. So for adults, it's intimate image abuse, or otherwise known as revenge porn. You've been in a relationship, you might have taken inappropriate pictures, or someone's taken them without your knowledge, and they're sharing them online or threatening to share them online as well. So similar things happen to adults, and sextortion does happen to adults as well. We have romance fraud, and all sorts of things as well.
Yeah,
it's massive. On predominantly on the dating platforms.
Yeah, the online dating world makes it so much easier, right? Like, so I remember when I was younger, I was quite an isolated kid, and you do like you go on like the chat roulette stuff, the Omegle stuff. When you're bored, you kind of go through it. And I look back on it now and I just think, geez, Adam, what were you doing, mate? And yeah, there's one girl I was talking to, and I was like, okay, yeah, you're really pretty, so are you legit? So I you take the image, you put it into Google Images, and you search the image, and it turns out, oh, she's this model. And I was like, of course, my look's not that good. And then you're like, okay, obviously a catfish. So then you're like, oh, it's not legit. So you cancel that person out. These days, you could do AI generated imagery, which is harder to kind of cross-reference because you can create anything super quickly. And you can make them like, you can, if you were really socially sophisticated in what, say, men want as an example, you could understand that if you're going for someone online who's most likely to give you money, you could go, right, well, that person's probably got low self-esteem if they're willing to give money to a stranger online. That they're looking for someone predominantly online because they can't meet them in person because they've got, I don't know, they think they don't look as nice, or they've got low social skills, or they've got low self-esteem, something like that. And then I could go, okay, I'm going to make her arbitrary rating system, 10 being amazingly stunning Princess Fiona from Shrek, 1 being like Shrek. You could go, oh, well, I'm going to make it like 5.5, make it believable, create a whole profile, do a Facebook thing, put a bunch of bots in the friends list, and whang, bang, I've got a profile. And I can go after that guy, or I can go after several of these guys at the same time.
Well, in fact, that's why, when we talk about like the Yahoo boys and other people, and now we talk about AI, the slight difference now compared to several years ago, whereas they might have to type out a bog standard template to email it to, literally type in email and stuff, to maybe 200 people, very time consuming.
Yeah.
Whereas now AI and other tech will allow them to literally throw that image, throw that general chat. Hey, how are you? Oh, you're looking fit.
And you can automate it as well.
Yeah, again, the automated.
It's a crazy bit.
They can lob that out to 5,000 users in an instant.
Yep.
And as I say, all they're looking for is maybe 20, 30 to fall for it.
Yeah.
Because it's all automated. They haven't actually had to spend time doing it, So I hate to say this, but cost efficiency makes it easier for them to do. So, again, we are looking, and I know people are looking about, right, okay, the sextortionists and other people are utilizing AI for a variety of things. And we are always playing catch up to a point, to be honest. It's a little bit going back to what we were talking about, safety by design. We should not be playing catch up. When a new product is launched in whatever that product is, right? Whether it's an app, whether it's a system, let's say the metaverse, for instance, before that was launched, people should have been brought in and almost told to break it. Literally, do everything you can conceivably do to break it, or ask those questions. How easy is it for me to do this? Or, even if it's illegal, I'm not saying you actually have to commit an illegal act, but just to ask that question, right, if I was to do this in the metaverse, how easy would it be? And those questions have to be asked.
Take off my jacket.
They very rarely aren't. Again, is it a platform? No, let's take, for example, a shopping platform. That's technically innocent. There's many of them out there. I'm not going to name any, but let's say a clothes shopping platform. Right? That seems innocent enough, surely. Can't be anything bad going on there. Well, we can start going down fraud and scams and so on and so forth. But here I am. I'm going to sell a jacket. Right? Actually, no, I'll tell you what. I'll twist it around a little bit. I'm looking for a jacket. Okay? And I see a 14-year-old selling their jacket. Hi. Are you selling your jacket? Yeah. Immediately, there's that chat functionality that I can interact with an underage person. Right? Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong per se about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're buying a 14-year-old jacket. What are you doing?
Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, I might have a 14-year-old daughter and I'm buying it for that, which is perfectly legal.
Okay, fair play. I'll give you that, Andy.
Perfectly legal, right? Okay. But what I'm saying is, when that system was designed, right, people should have been brought in, and maybe they were, maybe they weren't, and gone, can I do this? And if someone said, yes, you can, right, we need to do a risk assessment on what will happen if, and should I be allowed to do that? Should an over 18 be able to text or message a under 18-year-old? And as long as you do a risk assessment on that, right, yes, it can happen, we will allow it, right, okay, we will allow it. What safety measures do we have in place? What moderation do we have in place? Okay. But if you come in and go, hang on, I'm an 18-year-old and I'm going to message a 14-year-old, what's in there? What have you got there to stop me? Well, nothing. Have you done a risk assessment on it? No.
Yeah.
That's where chaos basically ensues, and that's the same with everything, and that, as I say, is a perfectly innocent shopping channel.
So with
So
with the safety by design stuff. Sorry, I've just smacked my microphone for you. Is there like a legislative piece that's been worked on an international piece around this kind of thing?
no, there's not
Is this
a
just a
globally.
term that's kind of being
There's a term which is being, I'm not going to say banded about. Safety by design is talked about, and there is
got you? Okay.
a very there is an agreed view on safety by design, which is basically that if you design something, you have to make it safe for children. And again, it's going back to what I'm saying. Okay, children are our future and they're the most at risk, but it should be safe for everybody.
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, it should be safe for everybody, not just children. Right? That's my personal view. Okay, but I work in the child safety space as well, so I do expect it to be even safer for children.
Yeah.
And that's what's being said. So if you design something, you must put all these things in place. So for instance, like one of the things, and I know this is going to open a topic, is age verification.
Yeah.
Okay, age verification, age access, age content, and so on and so forth. Okay, it's super jumped to the front of the public domain at the moment, especially in Australia. Right. Okay. So that's like one of the first things. Access rights, the content you can see, and so is it suitable for young children, or sorry, children, I should say. So that's part of what forms safety by design. If something happens, how easy is it to report? Then what happens? So there's a lot being talked about under safety by design, and it's what is being said is before you launch any product, these are the things you must not just consider, implement.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I mean, say you have every NATO country sign to it and go like, oh yeah, no, we're good, we're going to do this thing, then all I'd have to do is potentially pop across the border, or just use the telecom line across the border, or just use a VPN and then do it that way, and I don't have to do
well yeah, I mean, I do agree with the whole safety by design thing.
Oh, it's a good
idea. It just
idea.
needs to be a bit more thought about, because we're if I just refer to it for those that don't know, in Australia at the moment they're looking at banning under 14s on social media.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of stuff down there. A lot of stuff.
Now the immediate thought about that is, what a great idea. Okay, what a great idea. However, when you actually think about it, it's not really that practical. We've touched on it before. Kids are growing up in this tech world, they should be taught blah 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 blah. So let's just say they implement this in Australia.
Sorry, what do they mean by social media, by the way?
I again,
they just mean like
not
Meta and
completely clear.
Got you.
Actually,
okay.
So I'm going to, and I am assuming this. So it's always a bad idea to assume, but I am going with the things like Facebook, the TikTok, the Snapchats.
It's like general mainstream kind of, everyone knows what that is.
What we would consider is social media. Now, again, you've raised a very good point that if you're going to do it, you can't just do it on social media.
Define it.
You've got to do it on gaming, dating, shopping. You've got to do it across the board. You can't just do that one thing. And then, what constitutes social media? Are we just going to go, well, no, it's just the main big techs that we know about? Well, what about the smaller tech? And then how do you do it? Are you going to just say, right, blanket ban in Australia, you're not allowed it? So I'm a family going over to Australia. I've got a 12, 13-year-old, son, daughter, whatever. We go and visit family, friends. We go on a holiday. As soon as they land in Australia, they can't communicate to their friends and family back home.
Yeah, that's not cool. I can see issues happening. Yeah,
and also, I could go on about this. I'm not saying it's the worst thing ever. I'm just saying that it needs a lot of thought. So if you're in a school, right, and we know there are people who have slightly different ages in school in the same year.
Yeah.
So you could potentially have someone who's 14 in a school year with someone who's 13, but they can't communicate in theory with each other via social media. So is that going to lead to bullying? Yeah, I'm 14, I'm on social media, you're not. And it's back to the parental thing. how's it going to be monitored? How's it going to be controlled? You know, um, yeah, the argument or the theory of the argument is there.
Mm.
The practicalities of it, no matter what people say about age verification and or age estimation, whatever. Yes, we know that technology exists,
Mm.
but again, the practicalities of implementing this on social media that exist currently, like if you were to start a new social media company tomorrow, you could potentially implement it all,
Mm.
right? But current, you know, currently, and as we say, you can't just say social media, it's gaming, dating, and all of these. How can it actually be truly implemented?
See, this is so this is why I go back to the grassroots thing. It's because it's never going to happen. Not in my opinion. Not unless it's like a proper like a dictatorial approach,
And
which
what would
is just
happen?
not going to be
Here's a question, right?
accepted.
You're 13 years old.
Yeah.
You've managed to bypass everything. You've got your phone. You've got your smartphone, which your
Yep.
parents have bought you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're on social media.
Mm.
Okay. And let's say platform A has identified you're 13 years old. Okay, they can kick you off. Okay, blah 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 blah. Okay, they can do that. But then what? Then what's going to happen? You know,
Well, I'll just if all the platforms of the mainstream platforms ban me off of there because I'm underage, and they can 100% concrete figure out I'm 13. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn around to my mates and be like, hey lads, let's use AI to build a mini social media platform. We'll just host it on AWS because we can get $1,500 of free credits for about 6 months. And we can just run there for 6 months, create a new one, do it all over again. Oh, problem solved. Yay. But then if you go back to the
that might be a
grassroots,
complicated way, but I mean,
it's not for them. I mean, I can get a
they will
WordPress
just-
engine and I can put a
they
social media
will
platform into it for
just
free
go
and
to
do
something
it.
else.
Yeah,
They
it's
will
so
just
easy.
they will just move to something else, whether
nuts.
they design it, build it, or move to something else.
So it has to
That
be
is what they do.
grassroots. It has to be empower the family, empower the community, because it's not going to work
I
the
mean,
other way.
that's the thing. If let's say platform A kicks off this 13-year-old, okay, and then they try and get on it again. Now, I know that there was ways to identify that, whether they choose to do it or not. Let's say he keeps on trying, getting kicked off, keeps on trying, gets kicked off again. Right, so what's going to happen now, right? Are we going to send the police round to the house?
Yeah.
Are we going to arrest them for trying to access social media? Probably not. Are we going to arrest their parents for giving them a smartphone? Probably not. So what are the implications if we even do this and kids just go, you know what, screw this, I'm just going to keep trying to get an account?
I mean, we've seen arrests since those riots, protests. I'm not taking an ideological stance here, whatever you want to call it. I'll do that later when I've got more of a safety net. But we've seen people get arrested for what they post on social media. You can disagree or agree with it what you like, but if we go back 5-10 years ago, we'd say in this country, arrested for something posted, that's not going to happen. But here we are. So you don't know what's going to come over the next 5 years. I think things can move so fast, like it's hard to predict. But
what I'm saying with this banning is, okay, yeah, the general concept is there. Okay, I see the principle behind it. Okay, but you can't just come out and go, we're going to do this.
No, you can't.
Right? You need the people who are doing this or saying this need to sit down with the people who actually understand it. Okay, and actually, and we'll challenge them and say, you cannot do that. Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to agree, disagree. That's fact. Okay, so it's back to what I'm saying is, can we actually do all these wonderful things that we say, safety by design, banning under 14s, whatever? Yes, no, maybe. If the answer's no, right, let's not kick off a few, carry on having these arguments. Well, we can, no, we can't. No, yes, we can, no, we can't. It's like, right, what can we do? What is achievable? And it might be that we have to agree to disagree on some points, but we have to find that mutual ground to find the best route to do it. It's not a simple yes, no. We have to find suitable ways.
I think you and me and anyone with a soul, and especially anyone with children and a soul, can agree with that, to be honest. Like, we have to find concrete, real steps to take, like yesterday, on this. I completely agree with you.
And as I say, that could be going, right, I tell you what, improving the online safety in schools? You
Hmm.
know,
Well,
instead of just 2 hours a year,
I was
is there
about to say not the
something
two
else we
hours.
can do?
Yeah. Well, do you want to? I'd say, like, yeah. I'm gonna touch on briefly on what you said. Around like getting real people in the room that know what's going on.
Mm,
Much like this podcast is kind of getting people like you
mm.
who know what's going on. A scale to have these discussions, and everyone can listen. Because if they can't do it behind government's closed doors, let's do it for everyone to listen. Um, but I think it's about choice, like you say, and I think the government chooses not to solve this problem practically because I don't think they want to. I think there's so
Well, I
many
mean,
moving pieces and so many people with money because Meta earned like 13.8 billion, I believe it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't
mhm.
care. In the last financial year from just underage people, like 13 to 18-year-olds data. So there's so many people that would be like, yeah, we don't want to lose this money because it's making us a killing, and oh, by the
Yeah,
way,
I
there's more
mean,
kids every
let's.
day.
The thing is like let's put it in perspective. If we really break it down,
Mm,
right? All these platforms, not just social media, all these platforms, they're businesses, right?
mm,
Any business wants to make money
yep.
and profit.
Hmm.
That's
And these
it. That's
companies
the
are
general principle of it.
massive businesses.
Yeah,
Big.
exactly, right. And when we look at some of these platforms, they are massive
Mm,
on a global level,
yeah.
right? They have become popular because we as users
Mm,
have made them popular. Okay,
mm,
so let's just say everybody just went, we're going to stop using Facebook. We made that choice,
mm,
okay, as users, but it's so popular because of the amount of users. That's
mm,
us, right? So we've caused this problem in many ways.
mm,
Not, I'm not saying the actual harms, but we've made it. Facebook wouldn't be as big
mm.
if people weren't on it.
Yeah, inadvertently, people have created this
Yeah,
issue. They haven't
yeah.
realised it, but
So
they've created
so I forgot where I was going with this now.
it.
But what I
I'm
was
trying to think
what I was
back
going
now.
to say is we were talking about safety education and schools and stuff.
Hmm.
It's you know what can we do? We have to improve it, and that's where I was going to go with it. A lot of people will blame big tech. They'll just pass all the
That's
blame on
easy
big
to
tech.
blame, isn't it?
It is,
Yeah.
and big tech have problems, right? We know this. Big tech have problems, right?
Mm,
They know they have problems, and we could talk about that all day. But the thing is, it is not just a singular big tech face the blame problem, right? It's, and I'm not saying let's play the blame game
mm,
because everybody has a part to play. So that is like literally starting at kids. Do kids behave? No. So for whatever reason, they have a part to play. Education has a part to play. Parents have a part to play. Adults have a part to
yeah.
play. Government, regulators, platforms, law enforcement, judiciary. Everybody has a part to play in every bit of this, no matter what. It all crosses over, and everybody has a part to play,
Mm,
and that's the complicated bit, right? How can we deal with each bit in a realistic manner? And that's the problem. Now, if we just take the UK for example, because if we try and talk about this on a global level, it's mental. Even here in the UK, it's utter chaos, right? Simple fact of the matter is, even in the UK, anybody or a lot of people involved in the online safety, online harms world,
mm,
there is so much going on that we reasonably don't know who's doing what, where, and how.
yeah.
Okay. There's some great people. There's some not some great people.
Mm,
There's some people with some loud voices. There's some people with some quiet voices. Maybe those loud voices can be slightly inaccurate at times,
mm,
and the quiet voices actually know what they're talking about. And there is a complete lack of coordinated and cooperative approach here alone in the UK.
mm,
And that's why we can't even tackle it in the UK.
mm,
You know, um, there are many, many organisations and there are many, many agencies, you know, whether they're crossed over, whether they're individually or what. And this is the thing, if we actually came together and shared, talked, listened, will we agree all the time, 100%? Probably not, no. Will we disagree? Probably, yeah. But if we just take that approach of no, we're going to agree, disagree, disagree, agree, and all that, we're not going to get anywhere. But this is where we all have to come together and at least find and discuss as adults a mutually acceptable way to approach all this. You know, I know, and I'm quite lucky that I have a really good idea of the landscape, even in the UK. I know I have a pretty good idea who's doing what, where, and how. It's amazing how many times I speak to people and they go, "Oh, I wish this was happening," and I'll be like, "Well, it is. It's been going on for the past year."
Yeah.
Or, "Oh, I wish there was someone in Newcastle I could speak to." Well, there is. I can tell you their name. I can give you the contact details. Or I wish, something else was going on. And it's like, there is.
Yeah.
And that's part of that. Just here in the UK, and apparently the UK is leading the way on online safety, but yet we're so disjointed and so uncoordinated that, to be fair, we can't even tackle it in the UK.
Yeah. I mean, see, I really like what you've been doing. I mean, me and Colleen touched on it at like the end of the last one, but like, without you, I wouldn't have met her, and without you, I wouldn't have met so many other people. It's ridiculous. Like the Survivors Trust, we've got that coming up at the end of this week. End of this week, yeah.
End of this week, yeah.
Yeah. That's really exciting. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be there on the Thursday evening. Will you still be there on the Friday?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Sweet, perfect. Yeah. We can get our beer in or something, whatever. That'd be cool.
Not Friday night, but Friday. I'm there.
Friday.
I'm staying over.
Yeah,
I'm staying
Friday.
over 2 nights.
Oh, you can get a beer in the afternoon. It's okay. We've been working hard. You've got to relax. Yeah, that's going to be a great event. I'm really excited about that.
But again, this is what.
But it wouldn't have happened. There
is some
without connectors.
There's some amazing stuff going on. Whether they're individual groups, whether they're individuals, and whatever, and they are not getting the. I'm going to say respect as one. They're not getting the respect, the promotability, their voices heard, as much as they should. And unfortunately, there are people who are shouting and shouting and shouting for whatever reason, and they're being listened to. Doesn't mean they have the right information.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't take this attitude of you're bigger, better than anybody else.
So I've got one. I've got. Sorry, I'll let you finish now. I've got an extra grind. Please crack on.
We are all now. The difference here as well, I'd just like to point out, and I'm going to be very careful how I say this. There's a lot of people who do some amazing stuff, whether it's for free or minimal fees. Okay, hats off, respect.
It's too much of that,
right?
Yeah.
There's some people who charge an absolute fortune.
Yep.
To be involved in doing certain things. And the interesting thing is a lot of people will say, look at big tech, they'll put money before child safety, money before, profit before everything. Well, hang on a minute. There are these people charging exorbitant fees to either speak, consult, whatever.
There was one who charged 20. I won't mention any names. But there was one I know of who charged about $25,000 to sit down for, was it an hour?
Something like that,
to talk about it. And they said the
like,
exact same talk several times before.
We all like money, don't get me wrong. We all like money, and if we can all get paid that, maybe happy days.
Sure.
But hang on a minute. Who's now putting money before child safety? And are you, and I am going to say this openly, if you're charging that amount of money, are you doing it for the right reasons?
What is it, wolf in sheep's clothing?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're doing it for the right reasons, then you wouldn't be doing that.
I'd say if you have a really good lifestyle, that obviously if you had one, you'd want to maintain it, right? Because obviously who doesn't? Off of a singular issue, and you have no other kind of thing bringing in the money to maintain that, then I could argue that you'd want it to continue for as long as possible in order to maintain that lifestyle. That's just natural. Like, that's tribal instinct.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Everybody likes the money, but if you were saying, I'm going to quote a supermodel, apparently I'm not going to get out of bed for £10,000, where you're not prepared to actually engage, chat, or discuss anything with anybody else because they can't afford that, then that is wrong. I know there are many people, you know many of them as well, who will spend their time having a chat because we're so passionate about the work we do.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are lots of people who've done amazing stuff in this industry, and I care more. I care more and give more time to the people who don't make a buck off it. Like I make absolutely nothing off this. Like I've lost so much cash doing this. It's ridiculous. Future me is going to hate me, but but it's the right thing to do, and it doesn't matter because it's about kids and it's about people's lives and communities that are being destroyed day by day in very many ways. Yeah, gotta hate those people so much. But I'm conscious we're like an hour and 20 in, and there's obviously so much we could talk about. But before we kind of go to put this away, I wanted to kind of touch on, what have you got coming up? We know we've got the Survivors Trust coming up, and you've done some amazing work with those guys. But tell me more about what you're doing, man.
I mean, there are some things I'm not going to say I can't talk about. It's only because I'm waiting to hear on a few things, and A, I don't want to jinx them, and B, I don't know whether I can talk about them at the moment. But anyway, they are still in this landscape, and there's a lot of super fascinating stuff going on, and it's funny enough. I was speaking to a very, very prominent person this morning, right? Fantastic person. Okay, I'm not going to name them, but they are fantastic. And I happened to say, "Oh, by the way, do you know about this?" And they were like, "No." And they are so enamored that I've told them about it now. And so I'm still very much speaking to people, liaising with people, giving advice and stuff. There is a possibility I will be going overseas for a couple of weeks to assist with some child protection training esque stuff overseas, which is super fascinating. And there's some charity related stuff going on, and a few other bits and bobs. As we say, that there's a conference. There is a meet and greet for people in what we call the trust and safety space down in London in a couple of weeks. So again, it's the main thing for me is keeping my ear to the ground, knowing what's going on, not just in the UK, but everywhere, and trying to help as best I can to, put people together. And certainly from a UK perspective, we are looking to bring together like-minded individuals who maybe don't have the voice individually, but together we hopefully will be able to come together and have that louder voice. But the other important thing is that these people who at the moment it's just when I say a select few, that's no disrespect to other people, but just initially we need to start small, is we've got people from differing backgrounds. To give you a clue, we've got cyber trauma people, tech developers, educationers, research people, law enforcement, platform people. So we can have that discussion right across, very informal, meet and greet, chat, right, let's see where we're going from that. So that's a plan, that's something we're working on. And some other stuff going on that we could talk about for another few hours.
No, it's 100%. And if you think there's someone who would want to come on here and kind of give their take, because it's of a diverse group of people, I'm always looking for different perspectives. I can't wait to have someone on here who argues with me. It's gonna be great.
I could probably recommend some.
Oh, please do. Well, because it's good to have debate. It's good to have discussion. And I appreciate you coming on here, man. I've tried to be as least controversial as possible, which I think I've done right. I think I've done well.
And I think, to be fair, Adam, I think apart from us both working in an overlapping field, we're not exactly in the same field per se, but we have a close overlap, and we work. I would say, I don't know, I'd like to hopefully think you think the same, that we consider each other friends as well as associates, and it'd be good to actually finally meet you in person.
Tell me about it, right?
The other thing is that it does come down to another thing, and that's respect. And you and I know some same people. We work in the same circles, and one of the things I like about the group that we chat to is we have this respect that we can disagree, and we can go, well, actually, you know what? I think this, I think that.
Yeah.
And And we can go, well, actually, yeah, okay, I see your point, but this is my view. And we don't have any animosity towards each other. It's very open. It's free. It's back to free speech. But we understand, but we also listen to where each other is coming from and the reasons. And it's not an argument. It's an open, frank discussion, and that's what isn't happening in the bigger world.
In any of it,
so,
yeah. No,
yeah.
You're completely correct. There's no discussing. It's just shouting.
Yeah,
and we're only human. We're never going to get it right 100% of the time.
Exactly.
We're never going to get it wrong 100% of the time. That's great too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a pleasure, man. Always good to meet you, and I'm glad you introduced me to so many people. Just keep it coming. Yeah, I feel like I'm going to be referencing you too many times in this podcast, but we'll have to have you back on at some point. I'm keen to see what happens over the next few months with what you've got going on, and this field's changing all the time, so I think there'll be a lot there.
Always willing to have a catch up, mate.
Yeah, hopefully the next one will be in person as well. I'll get my
it
RV
will
by
in
then.
about 2 days' time.
Yeah, no, I meant podcast, but yeah, fine, all right, it's my house.
Oh, podcast, yeah, well, we've got that as well, but yeah.
No, the next one will be in a motorhome. That'd be great. But yeah, we'll catch up on Friday. That'd be cool. And
well, if you're there Thursday, I'll be there Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday evening I should be getting in. Hopefully, I haven't got much to go because I've got to go to Edinburgh first, and then trek all the way down afterwards. Should be a long journey, but it'll be good.
Okay, well, so, I think you've got my number. If not, to get me in.
Sort all that. Yeah,
and we'll catch up with Thursday evening as well, man.
Cool, man. Well, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it, and I'll see you soon. Yeah,
indeed.
Cool. Take care, man.